is Lon Safko, co-author of the Social Media Bible, published by John Wiley & Sons, the most comprehensive book ever written on the subject of social media. And today we are here with Biz Stone. How cool is this? The co-founder of Twitter. And we're going to be speaking about microblogging, but more importantly, general communication utility that Twitter is, and social media. And of course, we're going to be talking specifically about Twitter. So Biz, totally awesome. I'm so happy that you're here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Lon. No problem.
Well, could you give our listeners, first of all, a little bit of background about who you are and what you do at Twitter?
Sure. I'm a co-founder of Twitter, and before that, I helped start a service called Xanga.com, which is kind of a social journaling service that we started in 1999 in New York City. They're still there, but I left, and I ended up working at Google, specifically on the blogger team, for a couple of years before I left there, and sort of got back into a startup world, and with a project called Odeo, which is audio on the internet, a podcasting service. And it was actually while at Odeo that Twitter was actually a side project that we were working on, that we kind of fell in love with, and ultimately turned into its own company that just grew and grew and grew, and that's where we are at today.
And that's cool, and I just love Twitter, and just about everybody I know is tweeting. And for those who, for some reason, grew up in a foreign country or something, what is Twitter? Can you explain to the audience what Twitter actually is?
Yeah, it's really just a short messaging service, at the simplest level, but and it's a communication utility. But what it becomes now that we have so many people using it, it really becomes kind of the pulse of what's happening with the people, the organizations that you really care about most. So, on the one hand, you use it to just communicate. On the other hand, you look at it you look to it to find out what's going on.
And that's interesting that you say you kind of look through it. And what I keep hearing a term. It's called tweets. Tweeting. Can you tell me what that is?
Yeah. Well, Twitter is the name of the service. And it comes from the idea of the word that you can look up in the dictionary, which is sort of a short, trivial chirp or burst of information, referencing a bird song. And people sort of took to calling individual updates. Every time you make an individual update on Twitter, it actually gets saved and archived on Twitter. It becomes its own web page. And people have been referring to those individual updates as tweets. And sort of the act of twittering, or sometimes they say tweeting because they get fond of that word, tweet. It's nothing that we have sort of ever officially stated. People started using it, so it works out well for us.
So there's this whole vernacular that's kind of growing up around this technology.
Yes.
That's pretty cool. And you say that it's a little web page, it's a communication. So basically, it's like a little a text message, if you would. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's a short message, a short text message, and people can, one of the key things about Twitter is that it's agnostic when it comes to what sort of device you prefer to use to interact with the system. So if you prefer to use SMS, or mobile texting on a mobile phone, Twitter will work that way for you. But it also works over the web, and it also works on several thousand right now, probably more in the future, third-party independent pieces of software that you can either download from Mac or a PC or use with Flash. Basically, we opened up our infrastructure. We created an API so that smart developers around the world can create custom interactive bits of software to work with Twitter.
And that's something that I find really important, because on my webpage, for example, I'm able to pull in a widget that any tweet that I'm either sending out or following, it just automatically rolls on my website. So if you want to know what I'm tweeting about or twittering about, you can go to my website and you can see this continuous roll. So I think opening up, I think that really helped the Twitter community. That was actually a big win for us. We did it early on just to sort of scratch an itch. One of our very early developers wanted to be able to interact with Twitter a certain way, so we created a very simple API. And in fact, what happened was the service is simple and the API was so simple that even beginner API developers could kind of jump in and build something on Twitter that worked very quickly, and so it became popular to build
on top of Twitter. And what that did for us was it created so much variety out there of ways of interacting with Twitter that it ended up, just creating a lot of traffic and creating a lot of opportunities and options for people, which is great.
Well, it really is a great tool for that reason. I mean, I could be in a different city speaking, and all of a sudden I'll look at my cell phone and I'll know what other people who I'm following. It continuously tells me where they are, what they're doing, what they're thinking. But also I can be sitting at my computer and I could see those same kinds of updates. So really, whatever device I'm using, whether it's a cell phone or BlackBerry or even the Internet, that information is really, it's kind of transparent. It just works on that platform.
Yeah, and it's really that mobile aspect that we were trying to get at early. I mean, Twitter was basically inspired by the away messages on IM. So if you've ever used AIM or an IM tool, you see that your coworkers or your friends are in a meeting, out for coffee or whatever, and you can look at sort of a group of 12 people and get a sense of what everyone's doing or what everyone's up to. But that's related to the computer or what they're doing at the computer. And so when we took that idea and we just kind of broke it out and we made it more mobile by adding the ability to interact over SMS, we made it more social by building in more features. Then we created basically a new kind of communication, a kind of real-time group communication that really didn't exist before, and it's something that turns out that can be very useful for people.
Yeah, it really is. People really kind of count on it, as do I. And you'd mentioned that it's kind of a short message. Is it true to assume that this is limited to 140 characters?
Right. We limit Twitter messages to 140 characters, primarily based on the 160-character limit of text messaging or SMS. Because we need to leave room for the name in front of the message, so that you can tell who wrote it. But more important than that was the fact that we really wanted these messages to be able to work seamlessly across many devices. So if someone created a message on a phone, we wanted people to be able to get it on the website, and vice versa.
Excellent. And do you think that by restricting people to 140 characters, do you think it changes the type of messages, the thought that goes into it? Because my personal experience, I don't see it as a restriction. I kind of see it more as be more succinct.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, one of the philosophies that we have here at Twitter is that the constraints sort of inspire more creativity, and that when you're faced with these kind of constraints, you're sort of forced to think a little harder and be a little more succinct and be a little more concise than you normally would. And, we've seen people do amazing things. We've seen people sort of take that constraint and add even more constraint by twittering only in haiku form and things like this. So it's something we've kind of taken to heart. Once we sort of got behind the constraint, we kind of took it to heart, even just at the company itself and with regard to, designing features in general and, setting up the office space. How can we think and think within constraints and do a better job and be more creative?
Yeah, and I think it really does make it more creative. Samuel Clemens, who wrote under the pen name of Mark Twain, said one time, "I apologize for the length of the message. Given more time, it would have been shorter."
Yeah, it's totally true. I mean, if you've ever really spent some time working on something, you know how much you can keep working and keep sort of eliminating extraneous information until you really boil it down to its essence.
And that is one of the...
There's that, and then there's also just the idea of just lowering the bar and sort of going the other way and saying, look, it's only a sentence or two. If there's something going on right now, just go ahead and write it. Yeah. The idea that you don't really have to fill in multiple forms and it's not expected that you add a photo or anything like that. It's very simple. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why folks are drawn to it and why it's just easy to use and you find yourself using it more often. The photojournalism student James Buck, who learned about Twitter in Egypt as a way to follow activism and protest there, and he was arrested by police while photographing one of these protests, didn't have much time to think when he was thrown in the back of the car, and one of the first things he did was he just grabbed his phone and he texted "arrested" to his small network of people following him both in Egypt and back here in the States. And that was enough to sort of alert his network, who got, the dean of the college and some lawyers together and got him out of that Egyptian jail. But had had his mind sort of been encumbered by the idea that he has to think about who to address it to, or which of his friends is this most appropriate to send to, or what's the subject of this particular email or communication. But because it's just simple, it goes out to whoever's following you. That also leads to kind of that more immediacy and that easier use case.
Yeah, that's really true, because I would have to sit down and kind of compose an email. I would look at a subject or maybe a photograph, and I'd be looking at a few minutes as opposed to just one simple word. And that did, in fact, alert his friends and network, and he got assistance and was released as a result of that, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's really just the power of the network. So all we're doing is connecting the people together, and then they're kind of doing the rest. But making it easier to do is kind of the trick, making it, making that the tool that you think of first during those kind of situations, which we're seeing over and over again, really just comes down to simplifying it. Because if you're anything like me, sometimes I'll sit down to write an email and I'll actually stop and I'll go into something else just because I can't think of I don't know what the title is going to be. I'm not sure which people I should CC, and so I'll say I don't have time for this right now. I'll do it later. But in that situation, you don't have time to do it later. You just have to do it without thinking, kind of.
And it makes it easier for us who are socially media enhanced with all of this data that's coming in for all these different streams, where we can just take a look at a Twitter and in just really 15 seconds or less, 10 seconds, you can get the entire message and kind of move on. It makes it easier to digest, I think.
Yeah, that's another thing I think that makes Twitter unique, too, is that you can be as connected as you want to be. So if you are really an enthusiast of social media and you really want to follow a lot of information, then you can follow a lot of information on Twitter in real time. But there's a different kind of set of expectations that go along with Twitter that go along with traditional forms of electronic communication, like email or IM. Email or IM, you see people, you get an email and you're expected to respond to it. It's kind of rude if you don't respond to an email or an IM message when they know you're online. With Twitter, you can be hyper-connected if you want to, but you can also kind of step away. You can choose to not reply to people, or you can walk away for 2 days and come back, and there's not this concept of having to dig back out. So in many ways, I think it's an evolution of the ability to stay hyper-connected, but also to be able to control that information and to not get completely swamped by it. I think is kind of a new thing that more and more people are going to be looking to as they just get totally overwhelmed with all this, email and everything every day.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I can't mention any names, but there's a couple of social media experts that I'm not only friends with but have interviewed, and you can't reach them anymore. Their cell phone message says, please don't leave me any messages, because I'm not even getting cell phone messages. I'm not looking at my email. I'm way too far behind, so don't email me. Just send me a tweet.
Yeah, because that's something you can just, you can just scan it or you can skip it. I mean, and it's just a different set of expectations. I think that's where it kind of, especially when you're overloaded, it works out well for that.
It hit a great psychological nerve. You'd mentioned followers and following. Can you just real quick mention what that means?
Yeah, it's just, so the whole way Twitter works is it's opt-in. The idea is that we ask a question, and the question is, what are you doing? And whenever you feel like it, you just answer that question, or, you don't have to stick to that format, but that's just the way that we kind of prompt you to enter something. What are you looking at? What are you seeing right now? What's on your mind? You do that, and you just send it to Twitter, and then the people who get it are people who have chosen to follow your updates or to receive your updates. And the idea is that sort of as you move around throughout the world, answering the question, what are you doing, you have people who are following you on their mobile phones or on their using the web or one of these API projects. And that's all following means really is kind of subscribing to your stream of answers to that question. And what's great about that is you know then that the people who have chosen to follow you have chosen to do so. So you don't have to be too worried about what you update. You know that they asked for it, and you know that they've seen your other updates. So you can kind of let down your guard a little bit, and you don't have to always be 100% on all the time. And again, it lowers that barrier and allows you to be able to freely just say, I'm I'm walking down the street, or I'm at Logan Airport, or whatever it is, and it allows you to be free enough to do that you can extract value from those later, and that's another thing that I kind of point to as one of the kind of, it's not unique to Twitter. We've been seeing it over the last 10 years as the communication itself is just getting more and more open, and the reason I think that's true is because people are getting value out of being open with their communication. It's more valuable to tell a potential group of people what you're up to and see what happens from that than it is to send sort of one-on-one messages.
Yeah, I like the fact that it's kind of informal and conversational.
Yeah.
And one of the things that was interesting is when I did a little research, Robert Scoble has over 21,000 people that is following him, and 34,000 people are actually following him. Those numbers are just amazing. And then, of course, Kevin Rose, I guess, is taking the prize still. He's the founder of Dig and Pounce with 64,183 followers. Could you imagine building that large of a trusted network using your communication tool?
Yeah, that's a lot. I think Obama is actually up to like 80 or 90,000 followers now too. But yeah, I mean, I think those are outlying cases for sure, because most. I wouldn't say most, but we looked it up one time. About 50% of people who use Twitter only follow 10 people and are followed by the same number. So when you talk about like sort of these sort of internet famous or sort of Twitter famous people who get so many followers, that's a very unusual case.
Yeah.
But it is a neat sort of position to be in when you sort of have a question to ask of all those people and want to answer in real time.
And honestly, for the Social Media Bible, through this process of developing the different chapters, often over the last 6 months, I've used Twitter to throw out an idea. What do you think of this? Or who can I get in touch with to talk about that? And it's been a really incredibly good tool, because instantly I can reach a large number of people that trust me and that I trust them, and I get the answers almost immediately.
Yeah, and I think that's the key, is that sort of that immediacy is really helpful. I mean, you might be able to do the same sort of thing over email. It's just that it wouldn't be as immediate. You want that answer right now. I'm shopping for a phone in an AT&T store. Does anyone know what's a good one? And you get the answer back from people who follow you. I mean, I think that is it comes down to the immediacy of it. That it has the unique value.
Absolutely. Can you tell me the typical demographic, the profile of a person who's using Twitter?
Well, not really, because we really don't ask a lot of information. I mean, we can go back through and we can do some analysis and we have done that in the past. We've done surveys, but we don't. We really just ask for the bare minimum in order to get started on Twitter. So, the best I can do right now is sort of anecdotally say that it's such a wide range.
Yeah.
It really is like people from all over, all ages, and it's just sort of interesting to see that it's such a wide range. And in the future we may add a little bit more information, allow people to tell Twitter a little bit more about themselves. But for now it's just kind of free form. We don't really have a lock on exactly what the typical demographic is.
Yeah, and based on my research, it's everybody. I mean, it's business people communicating on a business level. It's personal communications for recreation. It's families communicating with each other. I've even seen cases where college professors, university professors, are actually communicating homework assignments and grades and information back and forth with their students. I mean, just about any application you can think of is really popular.
Yeah, it's almost like It's just, again, when you go back to the communications utility aspect of it, it's like asking, what is a typical email user or something. I mean, I guess you could probably get that, but it would be a very wide range.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there any statistics that you can share with our listeners here today?
About demographics?
Number of users or just how many people you have using. How many people are signing up? How many are current users? Anything?
Oh, sign-ups and activity and that sort of thing. Well, we don't give out the total number of sign-ups or messages sent per day.
Okay.
We have, like I shared that interesting stat about the 50%. We have been seeing a lot of growth. I mean, over the past 10 to 12 months, Twitter's grown something like 600%. And we tend to see we tend to see a lot of just a lot of usage around events. Any kind of shared event, whether it's a disaster like an earthquake, or the Emmys, or these especially these debates. Yeah. We've been seeing kind of record use of Twitter during these debates. People kind of sharing the debate in real time as they're watching it on television and kind of reacting to what the candidates are saying. And so those have been kind of the record-breaking moments for us. But not much we don't usually share absolute numbers. We don't have much in the way to share there.
Okay. We talked about some of the applications. For example, the student that was arrested in Egypt. There was another one that I read about on, I believe it was CNN, where somebody had set up a specific Twitter account that he can then broadcast during the San Diego fires, where he was, where the fires were, and everybody from emergency response to the Red Cross was actually using Twitter to understand where all the fires were, where people were trapped, and it was a pretty useful tool.
Yeah, I think, again, it comes down to that real-time aspect. I mean, for example, there was an earthquake a couple of months ago in Los Angeles, and the earthquake struck at 11:42 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and also at 11:42 a.m. were the first Twitter updates coming in from people just all over Los Angeles, at school, at work, commuting, just immediately reporting in what it felt like, what they were seeing, what was the scene. And that was in the first minute of the earthquake, and then 9 minutes later the AP put out a wire, and the AP is sort of known for the idea of a news wire has been around for like 175 years, and that the idea has been that get the news out there quickly. And in those 9 minutes, we had collected 3,600 individual tweets with the word quake in them. And that's, even if you take a sort of limited idea of how short or long a tweet is, you end up with at least a book's worth of Twitter updates, at least 50,000 words or more of updates in those 9 minutes about the earthquake, and it's pretty amazing. It comes down to that speed again. It comes down to and what you're talking about with the wildfires is you have people out there who are kind of just reporting what they're seeing. That can be very useful when you take a sort of more zoomed out look at it. You can say, okay, now we can sort of see people twittering, where are they seeing fire, where are they seeing smoke, and you can kind of look at that and get an idea where these fires are moving, a very unpredictable thing.
And it's actually saving people's lives. That's the point.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, you just allow people to connect, and they kind of do the rest. I mean, that earthquake is a good example, again, because, people just really jump on their cell phones during these kind of events, and what happens is AT&T went down, Sprint went down, Verizon went down, voice service for all those networks went down, but SMS can still get through because of its nature, and so people are able to Twitter and connect with one another through the service. And then, had the earthquake been worse, as it has been in other situations, we probably would have noticed next people then self-organizing and figuring out who needs what. Like what was happening recently with this in Atlanta with this gas shortage. People were using Twitter to communicate with one another about where they could access gas, where was their gas, where they could go and get it. And this kind of just flared up on Twitter, and we saw it become a trend on the trends that we monitor. And we looked into it deeper, and we said, wow, these are just people who have decided to use Twitter to help each other find gas. So you can, the key is to just being able to connect, and then beyond that, to be able to connect in real time and get these things taken care of,
Wow. And on a little bit of a lighter note, one of the things that I recently discovered in research is that there's several conferences that have taken place lately where a presenter was up on stage and actually had a monitor set with a Twitter feed, and during his presentation he can actually read what the audience was twittering him, so he can then tailor and customize the actual presentation to what the audience wanted to see real time while the presentation was actually taking place.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting use case too. The conferences and the real time. I once was interviewed by someone on stage, and they were doing the same thing. They had the audience sending suggested questions to him on his cell phone, and then he would just ask me. And I have a friend who's who's a director, a television and film director in Hollywood, and he had a show, a new show that he had directed the pilot episode of coming on last season. Mm-hmm. And I went down and visited him at his house, and I pulled up Twitter, and I showed him what everyone was saying about the show as they were watching it. So for him, having worked on this thing for, I don't know, almost a year or whatever it was, to be able to get that kind of that live audience feel like you might get if you directed a play or something, was really interesting for him to see that.
That's absolutely amazing. Can you tell our listeners where they can find out more information about Twitter if they want to go and begin tweeting?
Yeah, well, a great place to start with Twitter is actually, ironically enough, not necessarily to get started right on Twitter.com, but to go to search.twitter.com and get a sense of what people are talking about, what they're saying, and get kind of a sense of that before you go and you join, which you can do from search.twitter or from just going to the front page of twitter.com, which is a little mini tour of Twitter. But, I think we could do a better job of positioning Twitter as a relevant communications tool as we evolve and as the product gets a little bit better and we do a better job of integrating search. But yeah, search.twitter.com or election.twitter.com is a great way to go if you really want a specific window on what's going on with these debates.
Okay. Good. And one last question is that a lot of these companies are using this freemium kind of a model. How do you guys cover the overhead? Is it advertising based? How do we pay for this?
Yeah, Twitter doesn't have ads. But one of the things that happened with Twitter early on is it was just a project, and it was very conceptual. And we knew we liked the idea, and we thought there was something to it. Yeah. And what happened for Twitter was it got popular very fast, and that was great. That was a good problem to have. But it meant that what we really needed to do more than anything else is no matter what was going to happen, and no matter what our plans were for creating a sustainable company, we knew that they depended on creating a reliable network, something that could be used worldwide by a lot of people with a certain level of confidence. And so the fact that we got popular early meant that we had to kind of scramble in order to get to that reliability. And that's really what we've been 100% focused on. And in the meantime, what that meant was, strangely enough, was running a company without focusing on revenue until we felt we were at a strong place with regard to reliability. So that's kind of the mode we've been in until recently. And now that we're in a good place and with the network and the reliability, we now begin to turn our heads sort of to other features, and specifically, how do we make this a sustainable company going forward, and how do we pay for everyone's salaries, all the hosting bills. Yeah. And where we're looking now is another area where we've been fortunate is a lot of very heavy commercial usage of the service. A lot of companies like Dell announcing that they've made $500,000 on Twitter last quarter, and Comcast using it in this very interesting hybrid way of combining marketing and customer support together, and JetBlue using it to communicate with its customers, and Whole Foods, and what we've seen with the NASA organization, although it's not a commercial entity, just amazing success in achieving their goals of making the science more accessible to the U.S. citizens and the world. So we're seeing a lot of commercial usage, and I think we're going to kind of look to that as one of the early ways that this company becomes more sustainable.
And I think that's great, because I think everybody would be willing to pay something to keep this service going, because even the few times that you guys get overloaded, I mean, everybody goes into Twitter meltdown because...
Right. Yeah, I think the key is for this network, for this to work, the network wants to be large, and it needs to be something that's free and easy for a whole lot of people. So that's why the commercial usage is a little bit more interesting, because if there are big companies that are clearly using the service to earn money, then it's very possible that they're willing to put a little money towards it.
And it's reasonable to ask that. I mean, that's a reasonable business case. Is there anything else that you'd like to add about Twitter that you think our listeners might want to know, something coming down the road, or philosophy, or summarize?
I think just, there's a lot of philosophies, but I don't want to necessarily belabor everyone with those. But just the idea that it really is not necessarily a social network, but it is a communications network with these social aspects.
Good point.
I think sometimes it gets confused with some of the social networks out there, but I think we're a little bit different than that. I think we have a sort of a broader appeal, and we are more of a complement to these networks rather than another one of them.
I absolutely, totally agree. That's excellent. Thank you so much. I'd really like to thank Biz Stone, the co-founder of Twitter, for being here today and talking about Twitter and communication and a little bit about microblogging, but the bigger picture. And honestly, Biz, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Lon.
This has been Lon Safko, co-author of the Social Media Bible. Be sure to check out our other valuable social media tactics, tools, and strategies that can be found in the Social Media Bible book and his companion website, www.thesocialmediabible.com. For more information about me, Lon Safko, please go on over to my website at www.lonsafko.com. And again, Biz, truly and honestly, thank you for taking the time here today. This is great.
Thanks, Lon.